he had to execute it. Firstly, as he always does, he always wanted to prepare people, as he did now, shortly before he passed away. He addressed what we call all-in convention. It was a national coming together of the oppressed in Pretoria, where the regime had decided to pull out of the Commonwealth to declare republic. And that's when he indicated that perhaps the time has come for us to wage the armed struggle. He called 3 days stay away. He was already operating underground, and he left the country thereafter to the continent and went as far as Europe and England in particular, where he himself received military training. When he came back, shortly thereafter he was arrested. This was one of the first moments that Mandela came into the open, because he had to face trial in 1962, charged with incitement, as well as leaving the country without proper documents. And therefore, on his own, he was tried. He has this capacity to say things that will make you understand. Because once he was being accused, he accused the court that he was a black man in white man's court, and therefore there would be no fair trial. He was convicted 5 years, and he started serving. He was the first prisoner to be sent on Robben Island to go and serve. An island that has been designated that all troublemakers will be sent there. And of course, in 1963, his colleagues, as you know, were arrested in Rivonia, in Lily's Leaf Farm, where he became one of the accused and accused number one. Now, I'm mentioning this because at that point, the globe that had been mobilized by Oliver Tambo on the decision of the National Executive Committee was expected by us to play a role. Was here were leaders charged with a very serious offense. It was a treason trial before. This was worse than a treason trial. We're expecting death sentence, knowing the regime as we did. And I recall, as the court concluded this case here in Pretoria, and we were waiting for judgment, the entire world held its breath, because everyone thought there would be a death sentence. The mobilization of the world, because the world was speaking at this time. We felt the support then, because indeed, at the end, it was life, not death sentence. Thank you for your support, even at that time. Because we knew they were safe, we knew they would never finish life. They would never die in prison, so to speak. They would come out. It was Oliver Tambo and his leadership that mounted a campaign of releasing them, and Mandela's name was prisoner number one. So the campaign was centered around Nelson Mandela. That, in a sense, changed what was in the minds of the apartheid, that this was the most terrible prison, changed to be the rallying point insofar as the globe is concerned. Release Mandela. And of course, the struggle was quite tough because we were dealing with a very tough, one of the toughest enemies in the continent, the apartheid regime. And they were clear that this was killing the struggle in the country. Mandela and his colleagues were more stronger in prison than they were outside. In the middle 60s, he wrote a letter to a minister of justice of the apartheid regime. I think it was Pelsa at the time, when they were talking to, at the time they were talking to President Kaunda. And Mandela's letter was, why do you leave us sitting here as leaders who must solve the problems of this country? And to talk to our brothers out there where there will be no solution because we are not there. And he said in that letter, don't think we write this letter because we feel the pain of prison. Not at all. We write it because we feel, as leaders of the ANC, we have a responsibility to our citizens. A very powerful letter written by a prisoner. And of course, they were not ready at the time until these two leaders, Tambo and Mandela, almost around the same time, reached a point that time for negotiations had come. That was because of a number of factors why they felt time had come. So without having met to discuss, Mandela started negotiating in prison. And during that time, Tambo started sending his people to begin negotiations. It was during that time that Mandela sent a written report from prison outlining what he was doing, but reporting to his organization. And of course, the world, the globe was changing too. And there were factors that led to that. And of course, he came out. By the time he came out, Tambo was the president. He was elected immediately by the ANC as a deputy president to Tambo. And shortly thereafter, we had our conference. Tambo, who was no longer well, was no longer ready to stand as a president, and Mandela was elected a president. And therefore, the negotiations had to be undertaken by Madiba. Well, all what happened is history. Fact of the matter, he became the first president of a democratic South Africa. He did something that many of us, his followers, never thought he would do. The racist regime, as President Kaunda was describing them, they were very funny. As they prayed to God, they were walking against the rules of God, but they were praying God to help them. But he said, let us come together, let us reconcile, let us negotiate, let us create one nation. He had this capacity to persuade, to argue his case. I used to say during the election, during the negotiations, I don't envy de Klerk. Because if you have Mandela on the opposite side, you have a problem. On the day we took a decision to suspend the armed activities by our military wing, the decision was taken about 1 a.m. De Klerk was in trouble because he did not want to do so. He was demanding that before we move forward, stop the armed activities. And Madiba was saying, no. The issue is that you are armed, you have an army, we have our own army. Let us agree. We finally took that decision. And indeed, we're able to move forward. As people are saying, the right-wingers wanted, in fact, to disrupt the elections themselves. And in his careful way of giving leadership, we're able to avoid all of that and indeed produced an agreement that was once again recognized by the international community. He then created this democracy, gave leadership. He had an opportunity to articulate the values, the ideals that he said in the Rivonia trial he's fighting to achieve. And that if need be, he was ready to die. He was able to have these ideas and ideals and created the policies and the kind of government that today makes many of us as citizens to sleep in peace. Reconciliation, unity, peace, among others, justice, equality, caring, forgiving. These are values. As we remember him, we say we need to pursue and develop because they are our future. This is what we remember Mandela for. And we thank you for being with us. To have an opportunity to express the words of condolences to the family and indeed to the bigger family of Mandela, the ANC. We really feel we have brothers and sisters in the world, and we have friends who care about South Africa, knowing where it comes from, who also feel that South Africa should grow in its path of a democratic country. We feel comforted. There is an expression in Zulu when you have such a thing that says "lala ngenxa." In other words, sleep on your wound, painful as it is, but if you sleep on it, it's a bit better. We feel we have comforted us indeed. We'd like to thank you. We will be laying him to rest in his village on the 15th. We know that many of you have played their part by being part of us yesterday and today. That perhaps would be not the bigger kind of occasion. In his village, there is no stadium like the one we were yesterday, but it will be in his village. And some of you will be there, particularly our colleagues from the region. But you have been here yesterday and today is as good as having been there on the last moment when the family indeed put him to his grave. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming, for being with us. We feel very warm. Thank you very much. Obrigado. Merci beaucoup to all of you. Thank you very much.